Do you want to kick off the meeting?
Sure, thank you, Ken. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Ken, okay. So on behalf of the AWC, we want to thank everyone for joining the call today. We think it's a pretty important call and is complemented by another call tomorrow with the lumber industry. AWC, on behalf of the industry, collects data in two different ways and in two different surveys. One of them is, for those who are here from our Environmental Issues Committee, we collect data that we use for our Environment, Energy, and Safety biannual survey. And that's one use. And then the other use is we collect data for our environmental product declarations, our EPDs. And we know many of your companies use those EPDs for advantages in the marketplace, for promoting your products, for getting your products accepted and credited under some of the green building rating programs. So we have those two uses. But we've noticed there's an opportunity perhaps to improve the data that we receive. We know the data that we get for the Environmental Issues Committee for the report is pretty good, but for the EPDs, we do not get a lot of participation. And we just issued some new EPDs just in the last couple of weeks, but we know that the data on which they're based is somewhat threadbare. And unless we as an industry improve that data collection, that data that we use for those life cycle inventory assessments, we in the next round probably will receive some challenges as to the validity of the data as being representative of the industry. Further, if we can streamline our data collection so that we're not asking the industry members separately and can have just a single survey that provides the data we need for both needs, we thought that that would be a reduction in the burden on you, the companies, as well. And so we sort of see it as a win-win, and what we hope to accomplish today is to talk about what that survey might look like and how you, as the people representing the companies who have to complete that survey, think about it. Again, we're trying to simplify the process, if not the data we collect as well. So Ken, that's really my welcome. If it's okay with you, I'll just jump right into the antitrust reminder.
Sure. Yep.
So we have on the call today people representing companies who compete in the marketplace. And some of you might even be new to AWC, and we thank you for joining the call. But we always start our meetings with a reminder about antitrust law. We conduct all our meetings in strict compliance, and I'll be on the call today just to sort of monitor. Data is an interesting area because when you talk about data, there are antitrust implications. However, the data we're going to be talking about is always in hindsight and has really nothing to do with markets. And so as long as we stick to the agenda and we talk about the kind of data that we are collecting from you, we should be fine. But as a reminder, we ask you not to talk about data from a prospective standpoint or to talk about things like prices, markets, geographic areas. So with that reminder, we ask that you be mindful of it, that if you hear something that causes your ears to perk up, you bring it to our attention and we will have it addressed. So Ken, good luck with the meeting, and I will be in background.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Any questions for Bob before we proceed? Well, item 1B on the agenda is identification of participants. I think given the number of people on here and the fact that you all can see who is on the call, we will skip that step. I would ask, though, for those of you who are not on Tim's committee, the E committee or the Green Building Committee, if you would send an email address, and my email address will be posted at the end of the meeting. So you can either send it to me right now as a chat, and that'll, if you just send that chat message to me, it'll be private. Those will be saved after today's call, so I can get your email there, or after the call today, because we are going to want to be back in touch with you as we work through today's agenda and then tomorrow with the lumber manufacturers and then the July 21st meeting and down the road. So I do want to be sure that I can get back in touch with you at some point. So please do share your email address with us at AWC. Greatly appreciated. So with that as introductions and welcome, let's move on then to the meeting goals. Tim, to provide some additional background on this.
Yeah. So thanks, Ken. And this is a great opportunity to bring the expertise of the various committees together, and even those outside the AWC family, as we really try to get a comprehensive engagement on gathering additional information. So we really are trying to balance the goals, as Bob said, of trying to keep burden to a minimum, because we know you guys are all busy, but also realizing that there's some real opportunities here to get some additional data for either our environmental tracking performance, but most importantly, the development of these life cycle assessments and the EPDs. This is not the first call we've had. We've had a lot of interactions with our committees sort of separately, and sometimes even the surveys that James is going to share it already reflects a lot of input. And so for that, we're very appreciative of the work that's already been done, and Kazi with Rob and Vipin have already been helping out, as well as others there, in terms of how we manage the data when we get to that stage. So the real goal today is to try to get closure on the questions that are in this survey to make sure that they align with what's needed for the LCAs and for our environmental performance. And if there are some questions that are extraneous that we don't need to be asking, to really identify them. And we feel that a lot of this information, at least given my committee, the Environment Committee, is beyond the scope of where my members are usually working. So, as James will go through, we'll talk a lot about some of the inputs, where the resources are coming from, where the trees are coming from, as well as where the products are going to and what mode of transport and things like that. So it's really good to have a cross section of the committees and companies participating. So as much as we can, hopefully we can come to closure today or soon thereafter, so that we can then go into the mode of producing the data management system that's necessary for the eventual import of data when we turn to going live with this. So many of you participated in calls last week, where the recommendation that Ken and I are making to the board next week is that this will be an annual survey. That especially as we start out, it's important to get this data, especially with variations in the markets right now, to have a broader snapshot, if you will, rather than just 1 year. And that we'll send it out probably June 1st next year, 2021, for you to return it by the end of September 2021. So give you the summer to work on this, but you knowing the schedule will help you develop what information resources you need to work across your mills and your company and make sure that you're able to do this. But our goal is to share the final survey this fall, so that you have it and can start to design information gathering tools, so that when we ask for the 2020 data next year, you'll be as far along with that process as possible. So again, we really want to make sure that we keep response rates up and the quality of the information up, and that's a team effort from your side as well as the AWC side. So look forward to the input today from all of you. Ken, anything more? You're on mute, Ken.
Yep. Got it. No, that was good. Thank you, Tim. Any questions for Tim? All right. We twisted Russell's arm and he agreed to say a few things here. So Russell, if you want to weigh in on behalf of EEC.
Yep, I can do that. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Good. Well, I don't know that I have a whole lot to add in terms of goals. I think Tim outlined them pretty well, at least as far as I understand them. I do want to offer a welcome to all the EIC members, or on behalf of all the EIC members, to everybody, and look forward to working collaboratively with the Green Building Committee on this issue. I know the EIC traditionally works on things like emissions and more traditional environmental areas, but I think this is a great opportunity to understand a little bit more about our products and the environmental attributes of those products, and work, so we can work collaboratively that way. And also on the climate policy stuff, I know I sit in on a little bit on the Green Building Committee occasionally and hear some of their interest. And I thought on the climate policy thing, which all this is kind of related, our focus has always been on carbon neutrality and emissions and how important the wood products industry is for carbon neutrality that way. And the Green Building Committee's focus was not on carbon neutrality, but on carbon sequestration. And I thought that was just kind of an interesting variation to the whole climate change issue. But I think it really shows the importance of our products and our industry in the climate change picture, and for both aspects. So anyway, it's a great opportunity to work collaboratively with all the groups, or both groups, and look forward to that.
Good. Thank you, Russell. Yeah, that's a very, it's a good observation. The EIC committee is, working the issues within the manufacturing end of the product life, and the Green Building Committee is focused primarily on end use applications. So the codes and standards, the user groups that are selecting wood products for their buildings, for their projects. And so it really is good to bring the two groups together, since they do have such different interests. Not so much different interests, but different responsibilities in terms of the life cycle of wood product. So thank you for that. Has Aura joined? Aura Erickson. Okay. Aura is the chair of the EWC Green Building Committee, and I think she would really echo what Russell and Tim have been over. So we will hopefully hear from Aura later on the call if she's able to join us. Any questions at this point? If not, we'll move into getting a look at the survey, really what we're all here for today. All right, not hearing any questions, I want to introduce James Salazar. And is Vipin on? Vipin Varma, or is someone else from NCASI on?
Vipin Varma will be on later. Right now, it's just me, Rob Crawford.
Oh, okay. I just didn't want to pass over NCASI. So James Salazar with Coldstream Consulting will walk through the surveys today. James has quite a resume on LCA and the development of EPDs. He was one of the principal contractors on the development of the AWC, CWC joint EPDs that Bob referred to. We use James often as a consultant to AWC because of his expertise on LCA or an LCA, whole building LCA, product LCA, and also EPD development. So we've asked James to take a look at the various surveys that exist for life cycle inventory data, and to develop a survey that is as simple as possible, but that also collects all the necessary information. So the goal of what James is working through today is to only ask the the questions that are absolutely necessary for LCI, and then also for the environmental, energy, and safety survey that Tim referred to. So we're hopeful that by streamlining the survey, we can increase the participation from the manufacturers. So with that, James, I'll go ahead and make you the presenter. You can share your screen. And hopefully all of you have received a copy of the survey. If not, we can email that to you after today's call. There is one slight change to the agenda. We thought it might be more efficient to look at the comprehensive survey for multiple products first. As James walks us through that more comprehensive survey, then the single EPD survey, which was item 3A, will be just a quick walk through that, since that will be covered in the comprehensive. So with that in mind, James, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ken, and thanks for that introduction. And for any of you on the phone that you may have worked with us in the past, I also am affiliated with the Athena Institute out of Canada. So yeah, some of you, I recognize some names on there and probably familiar with me through that too, and working on LCAs and EPDs. As Ken mentioned, our goal in this was to try and build on the success of the Energy and Environment Survey, and try and recognize, the overlap of those two surveys so we can consolidate that into the information that's needed. So those of you that have participated in that project in the past but are potentially new to the EPD stuff, you'll see that a lot of the facility level energy information is the same and overlaps. But because we're taking this, EPDs are really a product-based assessment as opposed to a facility level assessment, you'll see that there were asking for more information on the materials that come in, where they come from, and also the products that go out and where they go to. So it should be somewhat familiar if you've participated in some of these projects in the past, but there's certainly some new elements that we can kind of focus on too. And yeah, like Ken said, this is something that we've been developing here for a few months, and we have some feedback, but we're definitely interested to hear feedback from everyone on the call with ways that we can potentially improve this, and we have time to do that since we're looking at potentially next summer to release these for completion to develop the data. So I'll go through really quick. The survey itself is developed in Excel, potentially working on some cloud-based options right now, but we find that Excel has the flexibility to do what we want. So you'll see in the bottom that it's broken out into a number of different tabs in this spreadsheet file, focused on the types of data that we're looking for. So I'll just jump right into it really quick. I should mention too, before I jump into this, the LCA surveys potentially in the past have gotten a bit of a bad rap because it is asking for information that may not be right at your fingertips. I guess the main theme is that we're looking for, your best effort to complete the survey, and we would certainly rather have an incomplete survey that has the information that you're able to put in it, rather than, going through the survey and figuring that, certain parts of it are difficult or impossible, therefore it's not worth completing the survey altogether. We're certainly of the mindset that some data is better than no data. So with that in mind, this first page here is just kind of a general introduction to the survey. What are the contents of each of the tabs? And right now you'll see that it's blank on contact information and dates for completion, because we aren't actually distributing it for that purpose yet. But once you have this, you'll have contact information here and how to get feedback and help if you have questions going through the survey. So the first tab in the survey, before we get to it, you'll notice here on the right that each tab has guidance built into the worksheet itself that tries to explain how each of these data points are to be reported. Again, any feedback you have, especially once you have this in your hand and you've had a chance to go through it, if we can improve this and add additional guidance, we're very happy to do that, and actually expecting to do that with feedback. So this first page here is really just collecting kind of general contact information so that when we get data back, we can follow up and ensure quality and ask any questions we need to have, and to have all of this on record. The next page here is product composition. And Ken mentioned this briefly, but this survey is really what we consider to be our kind of catch-all survey. So, for instance, if your facility is just producing lumber or just producing, let's say, plywood or OSB, a single product, then we have a bit of a simplified version of this survey. This survey would be appropriate, for instance, if you are producing multiple products. So let's say LVL and I-joists in the same facility, or CLT glulam and other glued up products like that within the same facility. So, this survey is our kind of most all-encompassing. So you'll see here on the left that there's places for multiple products. We can go through the more simplified ones in a second. But we're really looking for, on this first information tab here on product composition, to understand like I said, the composition of the product itself. So the first thing you would do would be to enter in the type of product here, the overall weight, and when we're talking units, you have some options here on common units that you may be needing. Now, if your product composition, if you have it tracked in other units that potentially aren't on this list, please let us know that. We can add to our list, and we can also allow you guys to enter in something custom there, and we can as long as we can understand the various conversion to get it to where we need to go. For those of you that have seen the EPDs, you'll notice that by and large they're on the basis of a cubic meter, and those kind of units are dictated by the product category rules and the various standards that govern what we're doing. But you'll see here we're happy to collect data in any sort of units that you may have readily accessible to you. So for instance, you'll see here product, and then the constituent materials of those products. So the amount of, for instance, lumber and CLT or glulam, the amount of the different resins, etc. And we want these for the composition of the final product. And you'll see here that there's places for several products, assuming that on this comprehensive survey that you're doing it because you have multiple products at your facility. The next tab you'll see is called Products Out. And you'll see that on the bottom here we have some that are out and some of the tabs that are for inputs. For the products output, we're looking for the primary materials, the primary products that are produced at the facility, the total annual quantity of each of those, any sort of notes you may have on those, moisture content, so that we can correctly estimate the mass of those products as they leave the facility. And you'll see that this includes not just products, primary products, but also wood chips, sawdust, anything like that that is sold to the marketplace. We need to have a complete understanding of all of the products that are sold from the facility. You'll notice too on the primary products, these first dozen or so, that we're asking for transportation out of the facility to distribution. Again, if you've looked at the EPDs, you'll notice that this information is not currently included in the EPDs, but it is something we're looking to improve our information on, and we've been requested to understand more about the where products come from and where they go after manufacturing. So you'll see that there's a field here for distance, and you'll also see that there's fields here for whether it's rail, truck, or shipped by barge or what have you. The next tab, probably one of the less important tabs, not to, they're all important. We do need all of this data, but this is one that typically we find that estimates are acceptable. These things are potentially not measured as well as some other things, but this is the waste that is produced. And again, these are not, for instance, chips or sawdust that are sold. We want this to be anything that's not sold that is an actual waste, not a co-product. There is a differentiation on how we treat co-products and waste in LCA. So this is strictly limited to the waste and where it goes, what happens to it, if it's incinerated, composted, landfilled, etc., and how far it travels. We need all of that information. This next tab, this kind of completes the output side of the mass balance that we're working towards. And these are the emissions to air and water. One of the things, we've made an effort on to help simplify this is particularly around this idea of air emissions. We understand that in the past that some of this information has been asked of you in the Energy and Environment Survey and also in the LCA EPD surveys. And in large part, this information isn't readily available. It's not a measured number. So, typically you're, in order to come up with that, you'd be asked to derive those factors. We've actually been working quite a bit with NCASI over the last few months to see if we can't find a way to do that ourselves, to estimate the air emissions. So I think, Vipin, I saw him jump on the line. If anybody in NCASI would like to talk more about how you are deriving the air emissions, then yeah, I'm happy to pass over the mic to speak to that.
Great, James. James, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yep.
Perfect. I can tee it off, James and Tim, and Rob is also on the phone. Rob Crawford from NCASI, and he can jump in. So as James mentioned, one of the things that we have learned over the years, where we have done these surveys and these types of estimates, is that ultimately the numbers all sort of converge around what we like to call the source category average from our own emissions data that we have collected over a few decades, either from our own MAC testing and subsequent member company testing that we have quality assured and brought into our database. So we felt that it would be much more streamlined and much more seamless to basically take our source category emission factors, if you will, and then apply it in conjunction with the production data and the throughput data that is coming out of this survey. So the idea is to basically build, the way we are envisioning it, we are going to build a very simple model mill for each product category, plug in the emission factors that we think are the most appropriate from our database for each process unit. And we should be able to develop a tool that then basically draws the throughput and other relevant information from this survey, combines it with these emission factors to come up with emissions estimates for for the various compounds that we are thinking are relevant for this activity. So that's really the approach that we are taking, and it allows us, that modular sort of framework will allow us to then turn units on and off depending on your configuration, and really customize the numbers to be reflective of what your facility is emitting, as derived from our emission factors. So that's sort of a simplified approach, but I think it ultimately gives us the ability to be confident about the data, about the numbers, and not have to do a lot of back-end quality control, because in some sense, that's what we have already done. We have taken individual data sets and quality assured that data to bring in what we think is the source category emission factor. So there's really no reason to repeat that activity again as it relates to the emissions, because there's already enough information that facilities are providing that we would have to look into.
Yeah,
so that was sort of the thought process.
We're trying to minimize the amount of additional information you'll have to supply. I mean, you're already providing information on raw material usage and production of product types, various product types. And, we may have to refine that a little bit and, ask for some information on air pollution controls and such. But we're hoping we can keep it pretty simple.
This is Tim. I'll just add that we've sort of discovered by doing the environment survey year after year that sometimes we find that mills are sort of left guessing what the numbers are, and if in the end they're all converging, as Vipin said, towards what the best estimates are anyway, why go through the uncertainty and when you can do it sort of comprehensively for everybody, save folks time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's consistent with the overall theme, I think, of this effort, which is to minimize effort on your end where we can. And yeah, that's, first and foremost in our mind to try and alleviate some of that and some of the stress associated with that, and to help get broader participation in this. And to Vipin, I believe that to their point, as far as emission control, we have included a field here where, generally if you can describe your emission control equipment, then that'll help them further refine how we're calculating that kind of industry air emissions profile.
I'm kind of thinking we might try to ask some specific questions and maybe put in a drop box where people can select, and then add it, or then add in more detail, their own comments if they need. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. This is this survey overall is a work in progress, and we've come a long way, but yeah, certainly that part is still under development.
Yeah, and just to add to what Rob is saying, and as he started working on sort of developing what that framework would look like, and looking at the data that we have, some very minor information on control devices helps us sort of make some threshold decisions on which direction to go, and that allows us to give you a much better number.
Right. Great.
James, we've got I got an email question that's maybe going back a tab or two, but some companies apply their ash to the land as a soil amendment. And is that something that you see covered someplace in the waste out part of the survey, or someplace else?
No, that would be just fine to put right here. Anything like that is not fully captured, we've tried to include places like other to put that. And what we'll want you to do, and this is true with the entire survey, if there's something that doesn't fully line up with how you think it should be, feel free to mark up this survey and provide notes, anything you think that would help us. We've tried to make a generic survey that will serve as many of you as possible, but certainly it's not we're not trying to say that this is, you have to conform to our format precisely. If there's a better way to do it, our primary concern is to make this work for you. So under, for instance, ash to, as landscaping, we would just ask you to put that here under other, and then we'll make the appropriate adjustments in our modeling to accommodate that.
Thanks, James. And I guess the other question we have is the EPD only covering A3? If so, is transportation to the distributor, is that A4?
Correct. And like I said, this is not something that has been required in the past. This is a new piece of information that I believe, the wood industry is trying to get out to help improve the overall perception of the transparency of what we're doing. That even though the minimum requirements are only to the facility gate, my understanding there has been some push for more information on where materials are going. So that's why that is included in the survey. And to the extent it may be something that does make its way into the EPD under additional information, but not necessarily in the modeling. But it is information that we would like to have and we feel is valuable. That said, we also know, that type of information may be a little challenging. For instance, if you're working with one or several distributors, then perhaps that's fairly straightforward to come up with those numbers. But, in situations that are more complicated than that, then, we'll take what we can get on the products out and where they're going. Best available data, I guess, is the key there. And that's also the case, too, with this emissions. You'll see on the emissions tab here that we have emissions to air, which is covered, that's covered by the NCASI modeling that we're working on. Emissions to water, we understand that, a lot of this may not be tracked or may not be applicable, and that's fine. If there's not data available, do not get hung up on this tab. This is, we can work with the data if it feels like it's less significant or less applicable to you, then it's probably the case. So we would just recommend that rather than spending a lot of effort trying to derive something that you don't have, that you fill out the parts of the survey and leave this emissions to water blank, for instance, if you're not tracking that. So switching gears from outputs over to inputs.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
On the emissions to air, we just talk about reporting what kind of control devices we have in place. So how does NCASI or the survey want us to handle it when we have these types of equipment, but they're there specific to the process and not as control equipment?
Well,
I'm going to, go ahead.
Well, I think that it's not necessarily cyclones and baghouses may not necessarily always be control equipment, but we'll still ask questions about that, about those. And they're not really controls, but you might call them process-related questions. They may go in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that if that fully answered your question. I guess this part of the survey here on emissions to air and the information that NCASI needs to do their modeling is still a little bit under development. We have this kind of in here as a placeholder. So if it doesn't quite make sense, that's just because that is the last part of the survey that's kind of under development right now.
I think one way to look at it is, we just want to understand, whether you have an RTO, biofilter, site loans, bag houses, and multi loans, and essentially, and the key categories of control devices, and that allows us to sort of decide what we need to do with our emissions data or emission factors as we apply it to your facility.
Michelle, is there something you're concerned that we may be over or underestimating through this approach where we're generating sort of process emissions through this new model that Robin Dippin's working on, and then we've got a similar side on the combustion emissions. Those are pretty, quote, standard as well, that have been done through LCAs for a long time, as I talked to hear from James. So is there something missing?
No, it's more from the perspective of I've not been involved with this before, so I'm still kind of learning how these surveys have been laid out and trying to see, okay, how is this going to play in to information we share when it's not acting as a control device, and what kind of, I guess, clarification we need to make in replying to the surveys to make sure that NCASI and the group have all the information that they need for how that particular equipment works.
Okay.
For example, Michelle, we might ask you how much, your total amount of planar shavings that are pneumatically transferred with just a cyclone, and maybe how much is pneumatically transferred with a bag house. As the final, say, control device, even though you may consider them process equipment. And that would allow us to estimate particulate matter emissions.
I understand.
Okay.
And I guess, Robin, they'll probably be, as you're building this module, and this is more an EIC issue, I guess, if there's any questions you have in terms of how it works or need further member input, we can sort of take that up on the side sometime this summer as you're working.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
Great. Oh, thanks for that. That's really important. And yeah, I do have the chat window open now, so I can actually see some of these as they come in real time. I'd forgotten to open that. So, like I said, switching gears from the output side to the input side. First and foremost, we need to gain some understanding of the materials that come into the facility, how far away they're coming from, what types of materials they are, etc. I know Ken has some comments here in a few minutes about fiber sourcing, so don't worry about that on this part of the worksheet. But what we're really looking for here is, for instance, if you're starting with raw logs, that we have the total amount of these log inputs, any sort of purchased milled wood inputs, other wood inputs, etc. And because this is the comprehensive survey, so it's intended to cover multiple products, we're asking for you to put here, tell us what product they go into. So whether it goes into, let's say, CLT or glue-lam or something else, or it's an input into the LVL or I-joist, etc. So the first part of the survey, the first part of this tab here is primarily on the wood side. Again, where things come from, the distance, the mode of transportation. And then below, we're looking for information about resins, primarily about resins. Some of this other information here on machinery, the kind of machinery consumables and packaging, I believe we're going to actually probably take that out of the survey because it is quite insignificant. If we do end up leaving it in there, that's fine. We just, we don't intend for you to be spending a lot of time on this part of the survey on the machinery and packaging inputs, because we do recognize that those are quite small in terms of the overall profile of the products. What we're really focused on here is the primary inputs, the wood inputs and the resin inputs. and we need to know as much information about those as we can. Moving forward to the energy inputs, those of you that have worked on the energy and environment parts of the survey in the past, this should look somewhat familiar. This has quite a bit of overlap. So here we're looking for total facility electricity use, any steam that's purchased. If you've got cogen, we're looking for information on that here, and any sort of fuels that are purchased, or for instance, wood fuel that's generated in-house. The one thing you'll find that is a little bit different is we've asked for your best estimate of breaking down these energy use categories by the product outputs. You'll see here in these columns there's percentages, for instance, for overhead, just facility overall, and then breakdowns here by the different products. Now, we understand that in a lot of cases, you're not going to have individual metering for different parts of your facility, and it's just impossible to come up with an estimate. In those cases, what we're requesting you to do here, it's in the notes, is to just put everything 100% on overhead. And at that point, we will do the what's called allocation amongst the different products that come out of the facility. We have some scaling rules that we do that based on. But if you do, for instance, you've got, let's say, multiple buildings and they have individual meters, or you're able to estimate, say, based on percentage of floor area, if you are able to provide some breakdown, that'll help us refine how we allocate the energy to the different products that come out. So that's what that's about here. And it is, you'll see that it is in addition to what you've done previously in the energy and environment survey. Again, down here, we've got parts for cogen. If you're producing your own electricity and consuming that in-house, we want to know about that. And then the final tab here is on water. We want to know whatever we can on the water inputs versus the water outputs. Now we understand too that this only works if you're dealing with a metered water source. So if you're grabbing off of municipal water, then you'll have potentially this numbers. If you're pulling off of well water, or you're capturing stormwater or something like that, then these numbers may be impossible to get a handle on. So, we're looking for your best estimate here, and if it is measured, then we certainly want to know that. But if it's not available, then just make a note here that says not available well water or something like that, so that we know that it wasn't just overlooked, that you actually, are consuming water, but it's just not something that can be measured. And I know, I'm sure that I've said this half a dozen times now going through this, but that, that really is the overall theme, is we don't want this to be, we want to minimize the burden. We want really to encourage participation, encourage you guys to give it a shot. Certainly the most important parts of the survey are the kind of primary product output, the main material, inputs and outputs, and the energy inputs. Those are the ones that we're really looking to build up our sample size so we can improve our data. And as Bob mentioned, the data that we have currently is now kind of right on the threshold of what's acceptable in the EPD, LCA EPD world. So we're really hoping for the next go round of these to improve on that the best we can. And we're here to do whatever we can to try and facilitate that. So that's all I have going through the survey here on the comprehensive side.
James,
if anybody has questions, feel free to jump in. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I know that one of my members is Denise has to duck out pretty soon.
Sure.
So if I'm just following a private chat with her, I think we can deal maybe with her comments maybe on the side, unless Denise, you have something that would be of interest to the general group.
You know, I think mostly my comments are just general and requests for clarification on some of the information in there. So I think I just want to know how to communicate those. That's all.
Okay, well, yeah, Ken's going to cover that at the end, but we definitely welcome finer comments after the fact as you study this or you get input from other parts of your company. So,
yep, good.
Thanks, Denise.
Okay, thanks.
Great. I'm going to jump real quick into the what we're calling the EWP survey. It's really just a product specifics version of that survey, recognizing that most of you have kind of one primary product that you're producing, and you don't need all this additional space to do multiple products and things like that. So this is really just I can minimize. Well, it's gonna not let me do that. It's really just a simplified version of the last survey we showed you. So again, it's got the same primary tabs here, identical. The few differences you'll see is on, for instance, products out, or I'm sorry, on the product composition. That's moved over here to the general tab. We've kind of moved that because there's only one of them to kind of consolidate the survey a little bit. And there is only one. And on the products out, you'll see that it's quite a bit simplified. There's just space here for the primary product and then the co-products, etc. But other than that, it is pretty much the same. You'll see too on energy out input that we have places here for you to break down the percentage energy for the different products. We'll probably simplify that to just make it specific to the product. And that'll be, besides that, you're really talking about the same survey. In fact, if you're unsure, then I would say pick up the comprehensive one, give that a go. But if you're pretty confident that you're a single product kind of facility and this one will be adequate, then we recommend using this one because it will streamline things a little bit as you kind of work through it. So that's all I have. If anybody has questions for me, I know this is a lot to digest right now. I know Ken's going to talk about follow-up and how to communicate with us in the meantime to give us feedback. But yeah, we do think this is, any of you that have seen the EPD surveys in the past, we do think this is an improvement over that. We recognize that it is quite a bit more information than, the energy and environment survey, but, we think this is an important initiative, and, as much help as you can give us on as much data as possible, I think we all really appreciate that. So Ken, I'll kick it back to you.
Okay, good. Thank you, James.
Ken, just before you start, I just had a follow-up chat with one of my members on this soil amendment question. As these LCAs get done, clearly sort of producing a waste is a negative, but if you're actually, helping farmland or soil amendments or something like that, that's providing some, organic material to land, is it worth calling that out in that tab where it would appear to be a waste, but really is sort of a beneficial application where we might, actually get some credit for doing that rather than landfilling. So I just don't know how the LCAs work, whether that would be a helpful quote offset.
Sure. There is a little bit of a fine line when we're talking, low value co-products versus waste. And, what we're really asking for on the products out is anything that's sold. If it is, let's say, given away, then potentially it goes into waste. But we do want to know, even on the waste part of it, where it ends up. And like you said, if it's like a soil amendment or something like that that has value, then that would be considered a product potentially, even if it's not sold. So we really do want, to get as much information we have as of the materials that go out. And then, you know, those of us in the LCA experts that are familiar with the modeling rules can decide, you know, how best to present that in a way that conforms to the standards that we're following, whether it carries some of the burden associated with it and it's modeled as a product versus a waste. But if you can kind of put on here and describe the best you can what that is, then that'll really help us make those decisions.
Okay, that's hopefully helpful clarification. Thank you.
Hopefully.
Sorry, Ken.
No, that's fine. Any other? No, that's good. Those are the kind of questions that we're looking for. So if others have questions, please.
I see a question down here from Raphael on water. Yes, it should be completed the same as the energy for the entire facility. If you have more refined breakdowns for, let's say, individual products or processes, just please make a note of that. We're not anticipating that's largely going to be the case, but if you do have, you know, any sort of additional information on water that'll help us figure out where, you know, how to allocate it, for instance, amongst different products, then that'll be useful too.
Good. Other questions for James? I think there's still time to give the surveys a better look and to provide feedback for further modifications. Right. So I'm sure the survey will be improved a dozen times between now and the end of the year. Anything else on any of these tabs? Okay, good. Let me see, James, if I can.
I stopped sharing, so hopefully that allows you to do what you have to do.
All right, just 1 minute here while I get the file open. This hopefully you're seeing a PowerPoint slide now titled Resource Procurement Characteristics.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Okay, good. I just wanted to qualify this by saying that folks at AWC are not experts in SFI or FSC. So I went outside for some help with this particular question. And so I used some experts. I did use experts in SFI to help with this. And what we're trying to do, and this is under additional information because it's not required for the EPD. But if any of you had the opportunity to watch the YouTube video that we developed, you know that there are end users that are asking these questions. And we feel that it's better for industry to be able to provide these answers to them than have them go out and find an answer somewhere that is incorrect. So this is additional information, not an EPD requirement, but it's something that as an industry we'd like to collect and then be able to use it with some of these end user groups that are asking for it. But we will only use it in a very controlled and careful manner and with direction from our committees and from our board. So and it will all be aggregated. None of this equipment will, or none of this data will be shared on a mill basis. So everything gets aggregated. Something like this might be aggregated at a state level or a regional level. We'll just have to work with that end user group to determine what satisfies them and answers their questions. So this is, again, these questions, or the questions on the slide need some careful look from you and maybe from others within your company. And I realize that your forestry people may not be on the call, or your SFI, FSC experts may not be on the call today. And that's fine. I will provide this slide to everybody on the call today. And then you can provide feedback, and we'll run it by the experts again to make sure that we're asking the correct questions. But really, there's three categories of consideration here. The SFI certified companies, those of you who are certified to the fiber sourcing standard, probably going to select 100% in row A. And that will be really the end of the questioning, unless you can complete 1, 2, and 3 under A, which would be the percent from certified forests, either SFI, tree farm, or FSC. For those of you that FSC certified, again, similar questions. In that case, for FSC, the B and C should total to 100%. And then lastly, for manufacturers that don't participate with either program, we're looking for just feedback on either the use of best management principles, practices, and then E is qualified loggers that meet some state training requirements. So we can take feedback on these questions now, or we can reserve that till the 21st, after you've had a chance to see if these are reasonable questions and you're able to provide the answers. So any questions on that?
So Ken, it's Donna Kopecki here. Can you explain under SFI certified the 1, 2, and 3 under the A? Like, why is that like a subcategory under SFI?
Companies, it's my understanding, the companies that come in as certified to the fiber sourcing standard would be 100% fiber sourcing. So even if it's certified forest from SFI or tree farm or FSC, that still contributes to the 100%. So
this is Ara. Can I chime in here for a second?
Sure.
So I think I apologize for being late. Also, any company that is SFI certified to the fiber sourcing standard, which would be at the mill level, will need to know how much of their material is coming from a certified forest versus a non-certified forest. So I think it's not really a subset. I think, Ken, I could provide some other feedback later, but how much is your mill certified to the SFI fiber sourcing standard? Mm-hmm. Then how much material are you bringing in that's certified to various forest management standards?
Okay. So then we have a second category under FSC, and so we need to break that down even further. Is that how I understand it?
Similarly, I think it would be for we're not FSC certified, but similarly, is your mill certified to the controlled wood standard? And then how much came from a certified forest? I think we're going to be asking the question twice of FSC certified forest, FSC certified forest. So I think we can simplify these questions, Ken. Okay. The percentage of wood that may come through our mills that's not from a certified forest is what's not captured on here. So it will likely not equal 100%. But companies who have a certified sourcing or a controlled wood program know those percentage breakdowns.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
It can even farther is if the mill did not own its own land, but was purchasing logs or timber from an SFI or an FSC program, you might want to capture that just so that they know that there's a sustainable factor in the logs that these members are purchasing.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I wonder if does our data need to show? I don't think it does. I think it's really just at the mill level, independent of if you own managed forest land or not. If you're purchasing from a SFI certified forest, you would sort of in essence be purchasing from your own land if you're certified, if your land is certified also. But Ken, it would be a good question to know, do we need to differentiate our own lands versus other lands? I don't think so for what I'm seeing in requests for EPDs, but it would be a good question to confirm. And those of us who are already certified to the SFI fiber sourcing standard in our annual SFI report that we have to submit to SFI, we have to provide the breakdown of this. Currently, we do that by state. So there will be some work for facilities to be able to respond to that sort of same survey question, but at the mill level. And I think that's one of my open questions is when we have state level data versus, or do we need to be for some of these things always at the mill level? And I think that's a question for the survey collectors.
Okay, good. No, good feedback. We will.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah. Hey, Allison.
Hey, this is Allison. And you plan to include this as part of additional information in the EPD?
No.
Okay.
I don't. That's not the intent today.
Okay.
So, this is information that we would be able to make available to end users in some fashion if they want this information. They feel it's important for their users, for their uses.
So can you provide an example on how you would roll that up for the industry?
Well, so an example might be EC3, right? The Building Transparency Group that's developing the embodied carbon and construction calculator, EC3. So they have a user interface for their software. They have a main page where they display environmental impact data indicators, global warming potential and acidification and other things from EPDs. They also have a line there that shows embedded carbon or sequestered carbon based on the weight of the product. So that's nothing we report in the EPD, but that's a number which they generate and report on that user interface page for EC3. So this might be another number that we can provide to them in addition to the EPD data. If someone's looking for it.
So how would you roll up these percentages for the industry?
Well, I think that's a question that we need to discuss within the Green Building Committee and potentially the EIC. Of course, we don't want to. My guess is that we don't want to provide this. We want to provide it to them at the highest level possible that they'll accept, right? So if we can do it at the regional level and they'll accept it, that's where we'd start. If they're, if they're wanting state data, that's a decision that the industry will need to make, whether or not they want to provide that to the end users at the state level. We can always say no. but it's part of the process of working with EC3 leadership to construct a favorable outcome for wood products.
Ken, I'm going to chime in here again. Allison, I think you're bringing up a really good point. This is Ara from Weyerhaeuser. I think we lost a little bit of sight here. State level data is already provided by the certification bodies to really understand wood flow and the amount of fiber that's certified. And then you can make assumptions of the amount that's not certified. I do think there is a desire to eventually get our EPDs to be able to have similar to the ASTM standard. Is it responsible? Is it certified, et cetera? And we can do that with some sort of weighted averages, but eventually it wouldn't be percent of forests, it's the percent of the fiber that came from the forests. So I think there's some clarity in the words here, which would then allow us to be able to do weighted averages of total percentage of fiber that are part of that were included in order to create an EPD. How much of that came from certified forests, non-certified forests, SFI certified forests, FSC certified forests, et cetera. But we need to get the question worded correctly. Does that answer, Allison?
Yeah, I mean, that's helpful. I think there's a little bit of challenge trying to ask these and then trying to roll it up. I'm not sure we're asking the right questions right now, as you were stating. Yeah, so we need to sort this one out a bit.
I agree with you. Looking at the wording of the questions, we need to get the wording correct so we get the right data point so we can then do roll-ups appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Ms. Howard again, and I think that's a huge point going forward, because if mill owner A doesn't own his own land but is buying 100% of his fiber from an SFI or FSC certified forest, I think there's something to be gained when you show it from an overall national percentage of products that are provided by a sustainable forest.
Good point.
Okay, we will work on this question over the next 2 weeks and hopefully have it refined or at least in better shape when we reconvene on the 21st, July 21st. Good. Any other questions on the fiber procurement? Again, this is a tool that we think will be useful for us to have in our toolbox when we're dealing with some of these groups. And that's the real motivation behind it. Okay. Allison, you had also asked about A4, and I know James added that component to the survey. The A4 is the transportation from the mill to the distribution center. Again, we're trying to come up with some average carbon impacts associated with that transportation distance. So that's really, it's not a number that's required on the EPD. We know, again, that it's a question that the end users are asking. For concrete, it's a pretty simple answer. It's from the mixing plant to the job site. For wood products, it's a much more difficult question to answer, and you rely extensively on the distribution channel to get your products into the marketplace. So we're just trying to find some carbon numbers, some industry average carbon numbers that can be used to answer that particular question. So that's the reason behind why we're asking that A4 question. And maybe there's data out there already, and if you think there is, please let me know. I know there are some organizations that collect that kind of information, shipment to different regions, how it's being shipped, distances, percent being shipped. So if you feel that information is already being reported somewhere, we can use that, just like we do for air and process emissions. We can come up with an approach that uses data that's already being collected.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that data is available out there. I was just curious how the PCR was stating A4, because there's some other construction materials PCRs that'll include default transportation distances for A4. And I'm just not as familiar with the wood products one yet. So I was just curious if they already had default distances in there. I wouldn't want us to go through the challenge of trying to collect that information.
Yeah, maybe James knows the PCR better than I do.
Yeah, there are no default factors, and you know, they aren't mandatory for the A1 to A3 part of it, but it is something that we're trying to derive because they aren't available right now.
Yeah, it's just your overall GWP number. You guys are only doing A1, A3. You're just thinking of including this portion as additional information.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, we would never roll it into the total. Good questions. Any other questions then?
Can I just want to sort of step back. Excellent presentation, James, walking through it. You know, it's easy to sort of get these here and we want to step back to the forest. Apologize for the analogy, but you know, we really want to make sure that we're balancing, you know, this is going to require more attention by you, more attention by us. But I think we've really tried to tailor it to, as James talked through, the elements that are so critical to meet school needs. So, you know, hopefully your mills and you, if you have a direct role, are finding that this is sort of finding that sweet spot, you know, but this is also the time if you're sort of feeling like this is going to absolutely overwhelm you and you have no sense of where this information is coming from, you know, don't be shy to speak up, because that's, you know, we want your input.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So if there are none, the plan is to meet with the lumber manufacturers tomorrow and review the survey that's specific to lumber, and then compile the comments from today and from tomorrow and reconvene on July 21st at 11 a.m. So we don't yet have an agenda for July 21st because a lot of that will be driven by what we hear these 2 days. So we'll review the comments and resolution to those comments on the 21st, and then we'll also discuss the launch and at least the current thinking of the Green Building Committee and EIC on how to roll out these surveys over the next really 2 years, 2.5 years. So that's the plan. If I have everybody's email address, I'll be able to get you the agenda and the GoToMeeting information for July 21st. So please, if you're interested in that meeting, be sure that I have your email address. Any comments? Closing comments?
Ken, if we're planning, this is Michelle Benson, if we're planning on sending comments after we've had a chance, I guess a longer chance to review these following today's call and tomorrow's call, when do we need to email those to you or to Tim? Is there a deadline for that in advance of the 21st?
Yeah, I would think by the 16th, by Thursday or Friday of next week would be ideal. That would give us a couple days to address them for the call on the 21st.
Great. Just want to make sure we get those to you in a timely manner.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. So let's say the 16th. All right. Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, thank you all very much, and we'll look forward to your feedback and hearing from you again on the 21st, if not sooner. So have a good evening and a good weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.